So today I'm joined by a man who's written a phenomenal essay talking about Bitcoin and the energy revolution it's going to create. And I thought the best place to start today's chat was to actually talk about one of the first people who ever predicted Bitcoin. And that was a man who said the following over 50 years ago about Bitcoin.
Because now I'll have to talk about something which will be one of the very big new realizations by 2000 AD, which will be a realistic scientific accounting system of what is wealth.
So, Andrew, let's talk a little bit about Buckminster Fuller and why his vision for a global energy grid actually relates to Bitcoin mining.
I think what's most interesting about Buckminster Fuller, he was a futurist, had many sort of ideas for how the future would unfold. A couple of concepts that I liked, that I have liked from him. One is that he has this idea that you should kind of build technologies that make the old technology obsolete. Mm-hmm. And I think Bitcoin's done that in a very peaceful way. The second is when he talks about global energy markets, I think it's very interesting, kind of thinking like if the planet could kind of coalesce around a single energy standard, then potentially that could bring world peace. Like we're all kind of operating in the same economy on the same energy grid, and we have sort of less conflict like we're currently experiencing today.
Yeah, let's take that a little bit further, because Henry Ford was also another visionary who talked about how Bitcoin could create global peace. For anyone who's maybe new, who we've clickbaited onto the video and they're not a Bitcoiner, maybe we can take that a step further and walk the listeners through how a global energy standard could create global peace.
Yeah, I think I would imagine that Fuller probably got some inspiration from Ford and Edison, even 50 years prior. So it was initially Henry Ford's idea to kind of go back to sound money to effectively stop bankers from funding wars. And then sort of recruited his friend Thomas Edison to devise a plan in order to create this commodity-backed money or energy-backed money. Yeah, super fascinating plan. They had various ideas, but one of them was to use a hydro dam in Alabama called Muscle Shoals. And as they're minting or as they're generating the energy, also be minting currency based on the energy generated. So super fascinating idea. I think it's really just the idea. It's not necessarily the idea of a global energy grid that they were exploring, I think, to sort of end all wars, as Ford stated. I think it was more of the idea of like a revival of sound money and taking power out of the bankers who tend to create problems in the world.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to frame it. Yeah, so that's a great point you make about, sound money. And I actually want to take this chance to read a quote from an essay that's going to be dropped in the energy edition of the Bitcoin Times. I don't have it with me right now. I do have edition 3, 4, and 5 with me, but I'm pretty pumped to see your essay dropped in that one. And you drop a banging quote. It goes something like this. Bitcoin is energy-backed sound money, built to be a reliable store of value, super fast and efficient medium of exchange, and an unchanging measurement of price or unit of account aligned perfectly with society's ambitions for abundant, sustainable energy. Let's talk a little bit more about how Bitcoin mining can create abundant, sustainable energy for us.
Yeah, so Bitcoin mining is obviously one piece of the puzzle, but you have Bitcoin more broadly as money. Something very interesting about Bitcoin mining in particular is that it's sort of this type of load that's very large and fairly agnostic to location. So when you have sort of remote renewable energy generation, wind power, solar power, and that generation is intermittent, meaning that you can't predict or you can't sort of control when it's producing energy. It's just based on when the wind blows or when the sun shines. That creates volatility in the market. That creates sort of distortions on the power grid. But if you pair that with a Bitcoin miner, you can then sort of modulate that output by, when there is demand on the grid, you can let that power flow to the grid. And when there's not demand on the grid, then the Bitcoin miner absorbs that excess energy and is minting Bitcoin, is minting sound money in doing so. So, I mean, the sound money aspect, the store of value, like the way I break it down in the essay is really the store of value, I think, is ultimately shifting it's sort of leveling the playing field, right? So instead of, central banks and people very near to the central bank being able to make economic decisions on what type of energy should be produced, or what the cost of energy should be, or how much energy should be created, that then levels the playing field to where every innovator, entrepreneur, person can decide what to do with energy and how to use energy in their own life. And I think that itself is very exciting. Then you have the medium of exchange. So with the medium of exchange, the way power markets currently operate, the electrical energy is being sent in real time. You have to maintain a real-time balance of supply and demand in order to actually keep the lights on, to keep the grid stable. However, the money is actually lagging by hours, days, weeks, months. So Bitcoin as a sort of a real-time, super fast medium of exchange ends up speeding up the payments. So I think about this in terms of like the time value of money. And with the time value of money, I kind of think of that in like three categories. You've got sort of the opportunity cost if you're not getting paid for weeks or months. You've got inflation obviously happening in that time period. And then you also have counterparty risk. So for every day or week or month that you haven't been paid for energy that you delivered, the risk with your counterparty and like your paranoia of whether or not they will pay you continues to ratchet up. So when you have sort of those components of time value of money, you're not actually getting paid at the time you deliver the energy, yet that supply and demand has to balance in real time. It distorts the market altogether. It's hard to make economic decisions in a real-time market without real-time money. So that is obviously super exciting. And kind of tying it back to Bitcoin mining with the unit of account use case. So, I mean, I think we're all kind of in this thinking that Bitcoin ultimately becomes global money. But I think what's interesting now is that, take the Bitcoin mining use case, for example. Bitcoin mining is putting a price on surplus energy. So, I mean, it's often measured in dollars, but sometimes measured in Bitcoin. But really what it's doing is it's already creating a unit of account for something that didn't have a for it to begin with. So I think that's really exciting. And then as Bitcoin adoption grows in the energy industry, globally, and in other industries and other day-to-day transactions, then ultimately it should become that unit of account and really a more accurate price signal.
So I wanted to quickly interrupt today's episode with Andrew Myers to send you a little bit deeper down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. If you're enjoying this discussion about people like Buckminster Fuller and Thomas Edison and even Nikola Tesla, who predicted Bitcoin over 100 years ago, we're actually going to be releasing a free Substack article diving deep into this topic. So if you want to check that out, definitely check out the link in the description of today's video. And we do actually cover all sorts of other topics on our Substack. We obviously talk about the Bitcoin bull market multiplier effect. We talk about the Michael Saylor induced supply suffocation. So if you're interested in any of those topics, definitely check out the newsletters we're pushing out there on a weekly basis. And with all that said, let's get back into this chat with Andrew. That's fascinating. And speaking, I suppose, of Bitcoin integrating itself into the energy markets, maybe this is a great time in the podcast to tell us a little bit more about what you're doing with Satoshi Energy.
Yeah, so put simply, we help energy producers sell energy to Bitcoin miners. And what that looks like today for us is developing sites for Bitcoin miners to interconnect at existing wind farms and solar farms, utility scale, 100 megawatts and above. We also structure the power contracts in those deals, fairly complex power contracts, multiple parties involved, plenty of regulations to deal with and just legal complexities. And then we also find a buyer for that power. So have a great network of all the like world-class Bitcoin mining companies that we ultimately find for these projects. And then from there, building software actually to facilitate real-time invoicing and settlement, and also working towards the future of basically real-time finance for energy companies, of which mining companies I think are going to be a part of that mix. So that means like real-time accounting, potentially doing Bitcoin-based collateral, obviously the real-time invoicing, real-time payments and settlement, everything that's made possible with this real-time financial protocol being Bitcoin.
That's fascinating. Are you guys primarily in America or are you guys international as well?
We are primarily in Texas right now. It happens to be probably the best, most deregulated power market in the world at scale. That said, it's not without regulations and political fuckery, as you might say. But yeah, we're expanding to other markets in the U.S. this year, later this year, or into next year. I think there are opportunities internationally. There's plenty of more opportunity within the United States. And I think as we continue to prove out these software products, that's where we start to scale more globally, because software is just much easier to scale into a new market versus the nuances of developing a large Bitcoin mining project in any market, just very slow, very complex, and takes a lot of sort of like local knowledge.
Yeah, that's interesting. And when we're talking about Bitcoin mining, I'm always fascinated about the geopolitical implications of Bitcoin mining. So we see nations like El Salvador investing $1 billion into mining. I think Oman, a Middle Eastern country, did something very similar recently, investing a shit ton of money into mining. And the Kingdom of Bhutan got exposed earlier this year for mining Bitcoin since 2019. So I'd be really interested about your thoughts of Bitcoin mining more at a geopolitical level. Do you see countries like Bhutan and others in Southeast Asia, like China, actually racing ahead with Bitcoin mining? Or how do you see that kind of unfolding? Are there countries that are going to try and hamstring themselves, like some of the regulations we do see in America? Or how do you think that's going to shake out?
Yeah, we don't have any direct knowledge of various nation states making these investments. However, the public investment with El Salvador, very interesting. Had the chance to talk to the Volcano Energy team a couple of years ago or a couple of weeks ago, and really like what they're doing. I think with that, there's an opportunity to kind of reform that power market in El Salvador, which I'm excited to see some progress there. And then I think some of the other countries that you mentioned, obviously in the Middle East, there's been a lot of public announcements around Bitcoin mining investment and that sort of public-private partnerships. But ultimately, the governments seem to be accumulating Bitcoin for strategic reasons. I tend to think similar things are probably happening in Russia, probably also happening in China. My guess is that the mining ban in China was more of nationalizing the mining industry than actually banning it. So I think some left, but I think a lot stayed. And now that Bitcoin's going into probably the coffers of the Communist Party. Just a hypothesis.
I don't think it's a wild one either. I've seen lots of people make similar hypotheses. And I mean, if you look at I don't know how accurate these Bitcoin mining geographical distribution maps are, but I saw one that showed that, in September 2021, so only 4 or 5 months after the ban, there was a bunch of hash rate that turned back online in China. I don't know whether those are accurate or not, but it certainly wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, hard to tell with VPNs, but yeah. I don't think it really matters though. End of the day, it's it's providing network security. Bitcoin adoption is growing. I think the game theory is playing out as expected.
It is day by day, hash by hash. The game theory continues to intensify. Andrew, I think you found Bitcoin earlier than myself in particular, but earlier than most. I'd love to hear what actually got you into the Bitcoin space.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about almost 10 years in at this point. But yeah, I was pretty fresh out of college, fresh out of grad school, and I was living on a friend's couch in San Francisco. And he had been working in Silicon Valley for, I think, about a decade or more at that point. And he started to teach me about Bitcoin. And once it clicked, once I sort of understood the fixed supply cap, the difficulty adjustment, kind of the network aspect of it, it immediately clicked because I'd been studying power markets when I was early in my career of working in power markets. And I thought, okay, you have this 24/7 financial protocol, and you have these 24/7 power markets. Like power is being bought and sold generally every 5 minutes, every day of the week. There's no nights, weekends, or holidays. Like that supply and demand needs to balance at all times. So I saw some sort of connection very early on, and again, I'm like, it's sort of surreal to have had that insight at that time, and then be in a position to actually build that future today. But yeah, from there, just started digging in deeper and deeper. Ended up living in a co-living space called 20 Mission in the Mission in San Francisco, and they would host the San Francisco Bitcoin meetup in the basement, and like people like Vitalik would come through back in the day, and just a lot of cool, really smart people who were early to Bitcoin and teaching me about it at the time. So it was an exciting time for sure.
That's cool. So it's probably been an exciting 10 years. Are there any, like, what do you think are the biggest things that have surprised you in the 10 years you've been in Bitcoin?
Good question. Put me on the spot here.
Yeah, I know.
You know, I think when I learned about it initially, it was just like, this is inevitable, right? It has this early adopter incentive to kind of propagate the value of it, propagate the message, and spread it that way. So I would say I'm a little bit surprised to see that actually like happening. I'm always surprised at just like how correct the thesis was on real-time payments for for real-time power markets. And I think the other thing that surprises me is just like seeing new people come into the market. You know, building a company is a really interesting process as well. So seeing, you know, talking to energy companies and seeing people at energy companies kind of seeing their eyes light up about what this opportunity means, or, you know, interviewing or hiring new team members who are super excited about the mission and what we're doing as a company, but also like the impact that Bitcoin can have more broadly. That's been a huge change from like 2014 to now, where it's like, you know, 2014 telling all my family, friends, all about it, how it's going to be the future and all of that, and nobody really listens except for maybe a few of them. To where now it's like more people are actually educating themselves and getting into it.
Yeah, it's good to see. Bitcoin is certainly, I'm not going to say it's going mainstream, but it's certainly kind of maybe going mainstream awareness. I think some people have said that Bitcoin's already gone mainstream, but it's only gone mainstream awareness. Most people are aware of Bitcoin today. They just haven't quite adopted it. Do you think there's a domino or a light switch moment in the future that can actually potentially take Bitcoin from like mainstream awareness to mainstream adoption? Is this like a failure of an energy grid somewhere, or is it more of a banking system or maybe CBDCs? What do you think will be the biggest catalyst for Bitcoin adoption?
I think unfortunately the fastest path towards mainstream Bitcoin adoption probably would be an event like a banking collapse or something of that nature. My hope, though, is that people who are in the Bitcoin space today and kind of people sitting on the sidelines ready to enter just continue to work hard, especially on education and kind of like retail adoption, like, you know, peer-to-peer adoption, and helping people understand self-custody or understand how to make payments or receive payments using Bitcoin. I honestly think that we need to prepare more people to be using Bitcoin as soon as possible, just given how fragile the world banking system is. And if people lose access to money, I mean, people have access to money today, and there's already wars popping up all around the world. If people lose access to money, even more people are going to effectively join the side of violence. If they see a solution, if they see a safety vote, if they see a way out, which is Bitcoin, then I think it's just a massive opportunity to create more peace in the world.
I think that's a beautiful note to end it. Bitcoin is going to create more peace in the world. Andrew, is there anywhere the listeners can find you online, or is there anything you'd like to mention before we close this thing out?
Yes, satoshienergy.com, at Satoshi Energy on X, and then me personally, AC Myers, it's spelled MYERS, also on X.com. And then, yeah, the upcoming energy edition of the Bitcoin Times. Super excited for that to launch.
So am I. I'm excited to try to get one as a Christmas present from the girlfriend. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. She's over there working in the corner. But yeah, pretty excited for the energy edition to drop. I'm sure it goes without saying, Alex and myself, super thankful for you to drop this essay in it, because it's an absolute banger. So thank you so much for your time today. And thank you so much for the amazing essay you've written about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Luke.
Thanks, brother. So I hope you guys enjoyed that chat with Andrew Myers, diving into the background of Buckminster Fuller and the other people who predicted energy money. If you want to learn a little bit more about this topic and learn about the predictions of Nikola Tesla and Henry Ford over 100 years predicting Bitcoin, you can check out the video that we recorded on that topic. I'm going to pop a link on the screen that's going to take you straight to it right there. And remember, don't forget to sign up to our Substack. That is going to be linked down below, diving deep into into all sorts of different topics. Highly recommend you check that out. And with all that said, let us know in the comments what you think of this video, and I will see you all in the next one.